أكثر من 60
مليون طفل
remain out of school.
تقريبا نصف
Of out of school children.
live in conflict areas.
Refugees, girls and children that live in poverty.
and those with nomadic lifestyle.
Miss out the most.
Let us put a stop to this now.
المعوقين نوقف هذا الآن.
Now. Now.
Now!
Hi, I'm Alec Wek. Not too long ago, I was one of those children. First, thank you so much. I am thrilled to be here, help launch this new global initiative, which will partner with organizations such as the United Nations Refugee Agency, UNHCR, which I am representing today. I would like to acknowledge the generosity of Her Highness Sheikha Moza bint Nasser and her vision for partnering with UNHCR and other organizations on this important initiative. UNHCR is on the front lines of the world's most pressing conflicts. When children's lives are turned upside down, UNHCR steps in and helps millions of children gain access to quality primary education. With the support of Her Highness' new initiative, UNHCR will be able to help hundreds of thousands more children in 12 key countries around the world. South Sudan, my home country, is one of them. When I was a girl, I was forced to leave my hometown, Wau, because of the civil war. There was 3 days of shooting before we left. The war broke up my family. My father's health deteriorated, and bless him, he eventually passed. Like the children caught in conflict today, I was forced to grow up very fast and leave the home I loved. But I was lucky. My father worked for the Board of Education, and he had a fierce commitment to education, not only for the boys, but also for the girls. If it wasn't for my education, I could have been a one-hit wonder, but instead, I've had a long career as a fashion model. More importantly, fashion gave me a voice. The partnership between UNHCR and Educate a Child will help innocent children who, like me, were forced from their homes to find their voice. This summer, I returned to South Sudan with UNHCR for the 1-year anniversary of independence. It was an amazing to see my country, a country caught in decades of war, full of so much hope. But even with so much hope, I heard heartbreaking stories. For instance, it's 3 times more likely for a girl to die in childbirth than it is for her to make it to the 8th grade. If you educate a girl, you educate a family, and you educate a community. Refugees need the support from the international community so that during this terribly difficult period in their lives, they feel some sense of hope. Thousands of former refugees have returned home to South Sudan to restart their lives. I've heard over and over again from the president to a returnee in a village that education is the hope for the future of South Sudan. Today, over half the country is under 18. When I was home, I talked with the youth about their dreams. They performed a play about their lives as refugees. It's a very hard life for innocent young people to manage. The generosity of supporters like Her Highness can't be underestimated. Thank you for making this pledge at this important time, working with an organization, I have committed to supporting. Thanks again.
Thank you, Alec, for sharing your moving and inspiring experience with us. Right now, millions of children are being robbed of their fundamental right to quality education. Children in war-torn villages in South Sudan, on overcrowded refugee camps in Cambodia, children living in the flooded plains of Bangladesh, or in isolated or marginalized communities in Kenya. Right across the world, because of disaster, because of poverty, children are being denied a chance to change their destinies. Today, we are here to give them that chance, to change the destinies of millions. Today, we are here to educate a child. You have heard the statistics. Over 60 million children are currently deprived of access to education. The figures are hard to comprehend. But imagine this. That number is the same as the populations of Beijing, London, Paris, Cairo, and Karachi combined. And behind these numbers are countless real-life stories. Stories of disadvantage, poverty, conflict, or disaster. But also stories of courage, resilience, of determination. Every single one of them deserves a chance to achieve great things. And that's what we want to accomplish with Educate a Child. Last month, I spent some time in Kakuma refugee camp in Kenya. I wanted to see for myself the impact of education zones of conflict. There, I met Suad Sharif Muhammad, the head teacher of the Hurseed Primary School. Suad is responsible for the education of 1,400 children. Children of different nationalities, cultures, languages, and faiths. The school has just 25 teachers. Some are teaching classes of 168 pupils in a single crowded space, without electricity, without pencils, and even without chairs or desks. For many of us, learning in these conditions can seem impossible, but nothing is impossible for Suad and the other teachers. They use their creativity. When they lack writing materials, they teach through song or drama. Suad herself grew up in the refugee camp and graduated from Hurseed School. And now, despite her full-time job managing this large school, she's studying for a degree through distance learning. She's an amazing young woman with an inspiring story of commitment. I think she's with us here today. Suad, are you here? Yes. I'm so delighted to have you here with us, Suad, and thank you for coming. Educate a Child is now supporting Suad's effort in partnership with UNHCR, but each of the 1,400 children in her school deserve the chance to write their own inspiring story. And that's why Educate Child is focused not just on the numbers of children getting into school, but on the quality of their education. Suad needs more trained teachers. Suad needs more classrooms. She needs the world to value these children's education as highly as she does. Because the hard truth is that the children in her city school are the lucky ones, the ones with a school to go to. Millions more don't even have that. Educate a Child will reignite the world's commitment to the hardest to reach children, the forgotten children. Our mission is to turn attention back to the disadvantaged children of today, who could become the confident and talented adults of tomorrow, if we just give them the opportunity. In a moment, I will tell you how Educate a Child is achieving this mission. But first, let's watch the children themselves.
For over 60 million children worldwide, there is no education. They are denied the power to change their lives for the better. Across the world, poverty is the main barrier to education. Poverty, conflict, exclusion, and discrimination. For many, it is simply a matter of survival. The family is desperate for money, so the children must work instead of going to school.
Many of these students are working. Starts from the domestic help to work in the handicraft shops, doing some embroidery works, doing some of the motor garage, helping the others, especially in some cases their parents. So it's a wide variety of jobs. If they work in the morning, they can go to the school in the afternoon.
Sometimes deep-rooted cultural practices stand in the way of children, particularly girls, from going to school. Among Kenya's nomadic tribes, it's still common for girls to be forced into early marriage, abruptly cutting short their education.
A girl child in my community is not considered, like they think after maybe primary level, you are married off. They think even paying your school fees to high school, you have to be married off by the end of the day. So they think all the knowledge and all their wealth will go to your husband.
Almost half of all out-of-school children live in conflict zones where even leaving your home to go to school can be a matter of life and death.
Living in a conflict zone had a huge impact on children. With my kids, for instance, it was a terrifying experience to send your kid and to say goodbye, and you don't know whether this is going to be the last day to say goodbye for a kid going to school or he's going to come back.
Refugee children fleeing conflict or natural disasters face particular challenges.
You know, the learners that we are dealing coming from different background. Some are coming from, in this school now I have learners from Ethiopia, I have Eritrea, I have Somali, I have Congo, I have Tanzania, I have Ugandan. Also the school in a refugee camp, we have these challenges of age. You will find 9 years and 22 years or 20 years in one class.
Educate a Child is an initiative set up by Her Highness Sheikha Moza bint Nasser in her role as UNESCO's Special Envoy for Education and also as a UN Millennium Development Goals advocate. It is already providing the lifeline of education to over 500,000 children worldwide in schools like these. But its aim is to help millions more with a quality primary education, however challenging their present situations are. Our partners range from international educational and humanitarian organizations to small local groups. And with their help and expertise, we're already targeting children who have, so far, been hard to reach. Education is the most important duty we owe to our children. It is their passport to the future. 500,000 children into school is just the beginning. If Educate a Child can succeed, if we can provide a quality education for the world's poorest and most marginalized girls and boys, then those children will in turn reward us many times over with their own successes and their own contributions to the future of our world.
Ladies and gentlemen, as we have just seen, the challenge is daunting. The children still not in school are the ones hardest to reach in the most difficult circumstances. But you cannot turn away. Reaching them will require investment. It will require commitment. It will require great inventiveness. Take, for instance, the floating schools, the floodplains of Bangladesh. You saw it on the film. Most of the children attending them are from poor families living near the water, who could not afford to send their children to school far inland. So, because the children cannot get to the schools come to them. The floating schools act as both a bus and a classroom, collecting the children and providing lessons. These are the inventive solutions educated child will support and showcase. And we are already having an impact. In just 6 months, we have started working on over 25 projects in Africa, Middle East, and Asia. We have reached 500,000 children. This is just the beginning. And for me, it's not enough. For me, it's not enough. Because just imagine how many we can reach as we continue to build our partnerships in a true spirit of fruitful collaboration and mutual learning. That's why Educate a Child is collaborating with the world's most expert partners, partners with a broad global reach, and partners with deep local roots. Our aim is to bring them together in a fertile ecosystem where innovative ideas can be nurtured, where successful approaches can be adapted and replicated. This is how we will bring quality learning to millions of children. Educate a Child is about enabling. It's about doing. It's about adapting solutions to the needs of children. Likewise, it's about building on existing successful approaches and collaborating for change. Ladies and gentlemen, in the films shown during this session, we have seen some of the children that Educate a Child is already helping. Now, let's listen to these children describe their hopes and dreams for the future. Futures that Educate a Child will help them achieve. Thank you very much.
I want to be a surgeon so that I will help my community.
I want to be a journalist.
I want to be an engineer.
I'm bored. I'm the bank chakri korte chai.
I will become Minister of Education.
Ami chana kore boro ya bank chakri korte.
I want to become ambassador.
Doctor.
Si je devrais quand je vais être maîtresse.
أريد أن أصبح في المستقبل مدرسة لمادتي الأحياء والقرآن الكريم.
Be a teacher.
أريد أن أكون متعلمة.
I have taken a diploma for teaching program.
أريد أن أكون معلمة.
I want to be a doctor.
أريد أن أكون طبيبا.
I want to be the next Ban Ki-moon in future.
Your Highness, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Michelle Hussein. I'm a broadcaster with the BBC, and I'm just so pleased that one of those children did want to grow up to be a journalist in the future. Those children and their hopes and their dreams speak to me as a human being, as a mother, just as I'm sure they speak to all of you here today for the launch of Educate a Child. This is a big, ambitious initiative but it is one that is already a reality for those 500,000 children in the projects that have already been funded. But as Her Highness said, we are talking about over 60 million out-of-school children, really hard to reach children, and Educate a Child wants to reach millions of those. So this is a really ambitious project. Getting those children into primary education and crucially keeping them there is going to require a huge effort from as many stakeholders as possible. So the conversation is going to continue from this point, and I'm delighted that we have 2 panel discussions coming up. We also hope that the conversation extends beyond this room, and that's why there's a hashtag that is live on Twitter right now, Educate a Child. Please use it as we get this debate going, because really we need as many innovative ideas as possible about how to continue to make this vision a reality. I'm delighted that our first panel includes some of those who are already delivering this vision. The heads of no less than 3 UN agencies, UNESCO, UNHCR and UNRWA, the Global Partnership for Education, the Party Foundation and the former British Prime Minister Gordon Brown. So I'd like to ask them all to join me on stage now. Thank you. So, welcome to you all. 5 of you represent Educate a Child's strategic partners, those who are already making a crucial difference in getting this work off the ground. And Gordon Brown, you're just a few months into your role as the Secretary General Special Envoy on Global Education. We want to have time to hear from all of you in just a snapshot, really, of your work, but also to give time to hear from so many others in the room who don't usually have a voice. So we have very little time, but I'd love to hear from each of you. And Gordon Brown, perhaps you could start. How does this work fit into yours?
Because of Sheikha Moza and her work, this is a great day for education. It's a great day for the Millennium Development Goals. It's a great day for every child in the world. And I want to be the first to congratulate Her Highness Sheikha Moza for championing every child's right to education, for being the catalyst for the delivery by the end of 2015 of the Millennium Goals, and also for being the leader of the United Nations General Secretary's initiative, Education First. And I think we all owe her a huge debt of gratitude. One month ago in Pakistan, a young girl, Malala Yousafzai, was shot simply because she wanted to go to school. And I have met her family, I've been to a hospital in Birmingham, I've been in Pakistan, I've talked to the girls who were with her. And Malala, when asked by the Taliban who was the girl who was standing up for the right to education, as her friends told me, she said on this bus, "I am Malala." And round the world, there are hundreds, thousands, hundreds of thousands of people who now say, "I am Malala," and forever now she will be the symbol of a girl's right to education as long as there are thousands of girls without education. And I want us to send our support to her for her recovery today. Because of Sheikha Moza's inspirational leadership and because of Malala's sacrifice, we now have the chance to deliver a plan for education for every child by the end of 2015, to stand up for the 10 million girls who are subject to child marriage that they do not choose and who are denied education, the 15 million children who are in child labor because they are working in situations where they should be at school, the 28 million in conflict areas, the 61 million not going to school. And by April next year, I want us to have a plan when the heads of the agencies who are here, the Secretary General of the United Nations, the President of the World Bank, meet all those countries that are not on track to receive and meet the development goals, that we will have a plan that we can deliver so that by the end of 2015, millions of these children will be in school. You know, it says, and this is my final point, it says you can survive for 30 days without food, and you can survive for 3 days without water, and you can survive for 8 minutes without air, but you cannot survive for a second without hope. What Sheikha Moza, Her Highness, has done today is give us this vital ingredient in winning the battle for the future. Let me just say, child plus teacher equals infinite hope.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. You've travelled a long way to be here, just of many others, but I think it really, gets the right impetus right at the launch of this initiative. So thank you very much for that. Now, the Secretary General is being represented here today by Irina Bokova, who's the Secretary General of UNESCO. And Irina Bokova, yours is the UN's educational, cultural, and scientific organisation. So how does your work fit into this initiative?
Well, I would like also to say how proud I am to be here at this, I would say, highlight of the WISE conference, of launching this wonderful initiative, Educate the Child, and to commend and to join also all the, I would say, praise that Gordon Brown, the Special Envoy for Education First Initiative, did for Her Highness Sheikha Moza. We're very proud, Your Highness. You have been with us, with UNESCO, for a long time. And I would like to say something very important. This initiative, Educate a Child, is an initiative that wants to go to the countries, to go to the most remote areas, to go to those who are deprived, to go to those who, because of their gender, because of they belong to some minority, of poverty, of distance, location, are denied the right to education. And we have seen here so many faces. These may be the future discoverers, the future scientists, the future doctors, the future Secretary Generals of the United Nations. And I have to say that one of the best experiences I had recently was in a community learning center in formal education of dropouts of girls in Jordan, where I met at least 3 young girls who wanted to become Director Generals of UNESCO. And I think it's so wonderful that these young girls and boys have ambitions. And once again, I would like to pledge all our support to Her Highness and to this initiative. It fits so well within the Secretary General's initiative, Education First. We have to reach the Millennium Development Goal by the year 2015 to the maximum extent possible. We have to join our forces. We have to work together. We have to work in partnerships. We have to find innovative ways to reach out to those children who are either in conflict or in refugee camps. And I was very impressed by the presentation just given by the Special Envoy of the High Commission of Refugees. We have a moral and political and human obligation towards these children, and I would like to pledge all our support to this initiative.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Irina Bokova. Now, none of this work is easy, but I think it's fair to say that the work that Antonio Guterres and UNHCR are doing with children in refugee camps and getting them an education is amongst the most challenging. So perhaps, Antonio Guterres, you could tell us more about your work.
Well, I think Educate a Child and Her Highness's initiative is particularly important for a country we can imagine, let's call it refugee land. It's a country with about 11 million people, just taking into account UNHCR mandate, more if you take UNRWA's mandate also into account. But a country without territory, without government, with people scattered all over the world, speaking tens and tens of different languages. Now, this country exists in a world that is more and more a knowledge-based economy and society, where knowledge becomes the key factor to provide opportunities to both countries and peoples. And education remains the cornerstone for knowledge. Now, this country has no Ministry of Education, no educational system. 20% of the refugees are in the developed world, and their children benefit from the schools of the countries that host them. But 80% are in the developing world. And most of the children in the developing world have enormous difficulties. First of all, some countries do not allow them to go to their schools, the host countries. Some countries allow them, but have not the capacity to provide adequate education. And UNHCR's possibilities to deliver education with quality to such a large number of people in such a diversified number of situations is extremely limited. So 25% of refugee children in the world have no access to primary education, And, of course, as this is an average and includes the developed world, we have many countries in the world in which less than 50% have access to primary education. And this is why this initiative is so important. We will work together in 12 countries, and in the first year, we will bring 172,000 more children to primary school. And we'll also try to invest to make sure that education has more quality. Education is not only a basic human right, it is an enabling right for many other rights to be enjoyed. And for us, it's an enabling right for solutions for refugees, whether they will one day be able to go back home and rebuild their countries, or whether they can be accepted and integrated in their countries of asylum, or they can be resettled into a developed world country, and education is essential for them to enjoy the opportunities of modern life. But education is a very important protection tool. Protection tool for girls against sexual and gender-based violence, against sexual exploitation and abuse, protection tool for boys against forced recruitment, protection tool for both in relation to trafficking, in relation to forced labor.
I'm conscious that you travelled with Her Highness into what you call refugee land, compellingly. And, you know, we've seen a snapshot of the children who I think, Your Highness, you call them the lucky ones in that refugee camp because they are actually in a school. Not all of us have the chance to make that kind of journey. You know, if you could take everyone here into the journey Her Highness had been on, what would be the one thing that you'd want us to leave understanding?
I think that the most important thing to understand is the resilience of these people, their determination to improve their lives, to rebuild their lives, and education is the basic tool to allow them to do so.
Thank you very much indeed, Antonio Guterres. Now, the work of... The work for refugees in Gaza particularly has already been touched upon. Filippo Grandi is in charge of UNRWA, which has done work for Palestinian refugees over many decades, and particularly, Filippo Grandi, the work that you're doing on education for refugees. Tell us more.
I want to start from where Antonio Guterres left it and tell you a small story. I was in Lebanon a few days ago and went to visit a family of Palestinian refugees from Syria, so already refugees in Syria who had escaped into Lebanon. And I asked them, why have you come here? And of course they told me about houses destroyed, fear, poverty, but they told me, look, there's one reason why we came here, and that's because our children in Syria cannot go to school anymore, and we want them to continue their education. I think this is a very fitting comment to how important this initiative is. Two words about UNRWA, the lesser known UN refugee agency. We serve 5 million Palestinian refugees, and in fact, among the things that we do, the most important is education. Every day we bring 500,000 Palestinian refugees to more than 700 schools in Gaza, in West Bank and East Jerusalem, in Jordan, in Syria, and in Lebanon. And there's two things that we have learned, very important and relevant things that we have learned through our education work. One is that education is extremely important in a situation of refuge, of exile, to defend, build, maintain the identity of people, the collective and individual identity of people. So if there's no education, the identity is threatened, and that is very, very negative. The second thing is that when there is conflict, immediately education suffers because children cannot go to school. We've seen this particularly in Gaza. When we developed a few years back more sophisticated tools to measure educational achievement, the place in our region where the results in schools were worst were in Gaza, which has been, as you know, affected by conflict for so many decades. And today we face that challenge in Syria, where unfortunately, a situation which has been very stable for a long time, Palestinian refugees in Syria, there's 500,000 of them, they've lived very well, relatively well, although as refugees in Syria for decades. But what happens there tells us that we should never be complacent, that the negative power of conflict is amazing and needs to be countered. And we see today children that cannot go to school in Syria. And that's why I welcome so much the possibility for UNRWA, together with other United Nations and other agencies, to become a partner in Educate a Child. And I want to join the others in thanking you, Your Highness, and thanking all those that have cooperated in this initiative to make it a reality.
Thank you so much. Filippo Grandi of UNRWA. You know, educating children in conflict is just one part of the Educate a Child mission, but it strikes me from what you're saying that in those really turbulent moments when you're in that kind of conflict or refugee situation, having an education is one of the few things that you can hold on to at a time like that. Next, I'd like to turn to Carol Bellamy, who's the former head of UNICEF and now chairs the Global Partnership for Education, which connects donors and recipient governments and, you know, makes sure that the right kinds of plans and projects are getting money. Carol.
Well, now, as Filippo followed Antonio, I want to follow him by and your point. One of the most important things you can do for a child in an abnormal situation is to try and bring some normality into their life. And that's why education is so critical in these conflict and post-conflict areas. And again, we know the numbers that almost half, if not half, of all of those 61 million children who've never had a chance to go to school are living in those areas. And we have a responsibility to get them into school. So let me echo others in acknowledging not only the generosity, but really the commitment and the vision of Your Highness. It is that kind of commitment, that leadership, that's what makes the difference. It's that leadership that will get us close to those Millennium Development Goals and will keep education on the agenda post-2015. Because this is not something that stops at the end of 2015. We have to get there and then we have to keep going. As you suggested, we are a partnership not only of donors in developing countries, a very broad partnership of all the actors in education, civil society, the teaching profession, private sector, private foundations, international organizations, UNESCO, UNICEF, the World Bank. And that partnership is important to recognize the breadth of responsibility, of the community responsibility for education, because we all have a role to play. We're very proud to be able to join this partnership. The first 3 countries that the Global Partnership for Education will partner with Her Highness are Sudan, Chad, and as Alec spoke so movingly, South Sudan. All of these places where the numbers of children out of school are just much too large and they need to go to school. But as the initiative suggests, it's about educate a child. It isn't just get them to a school. It is make sure the children now get an education. That's our responsibility. They need to learn. They need to read. They need to become global citizens, if you will. That's why Education First talks about global citizens. You may never leave your community, but you need to be engaged in your community. So, Global Partnership for Education, educate a child. We're very pleased to join in this effort.
Thank you so much, Carol Bellamy. Thank you. Now, so Educate a Child projects are up and running in different countries, and the Bharti Foundation, represented today by Rakesh Bharti Mittal, is absolutely crucial to what Educate a Child is doing in India.
Thank you, and a very good morning. I think today is a very, very special day when we are looking at the launch of Educate a Child, an initiative of Her Highness, and I must compliment you for this unique initiative, not only in your own country, not only in the countries where you are partnering with your partners, but around the globe. India is committed to the Millennium Development Goal and clearly have moved much forward on universalization of elementary education. A landmark legislation was passed for right to education, where a child from 6 to 14 must go to school and get educated. What has this really resulted into is the enrollment in these schools has gone up beyond what we had expected. It's now at about 93%. But the challenges are to retain that child in the school and go for complete holistic education, what my colleague just mentioned. And I think that is a challenge where private sector initiatives are now partnering with the governments and coming out on their own in a complementary situation to take this initiative forward. Bharti Enterprises, with this vision of impacting quality education, set up the Bharti Foundation, which is now reaching out to 254 village schools across India. 38,000 children are coming to schools who are getting absolutely free education. We provide them uniform, books, a midday meal, because I think that's extremely important for us to really attract those children into school.
Otherwise, all of these are barriers. The uniform, the books.
And more importantly, we are focusing on the girl child. And I very strongly believe if you educate a girl, you educate a family, educate a future generations. And to me also, education without value system and value education is not something which I really agree. And that is where 30% of the time is spent outside the classroom, on community development, on environmental issues, so on and so forth. Today also, to me, it's an important day because 14th November is celebrated as Children's Day in India. This is the birth anniversary of Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru. And to me, launching this initiative for children across the globe is extremely important for me. And I can assure Her Highness that the partnership which we have entered with you, the collective resources, collective knowledge, will not only be beneficial for those very children who are studying in our schools, but across India to ensure that we bring out-of-school children into the schools and provide them a platform which build futures and their careers for the next generation.
Thank you. It's good to know it's an auspicious day in more than one way then. Thank you very much. Thank you. I'd just like to end by coming back to you, Gordon Brown. You talked about how this initiative gives hope. But, you know, these are staggering numbers, really daunting numbers. There's evidence that in the last couple of years, the Millennium Development Goal of education, you know, hasn't progressed as much as it should. So what is it that's going to make a difference now? Because clearly, you know, there isn't a lot of money going around as far as on the donor side. You know, is it leadership? Is it just a reality check?
I was in South Sudan, and it's great that Alex spoke to us, and she's a great heroine of people in South Sudan. And I talked to mothers in South Sudan, young teenage mothers, and what they wanted most of all was not food or shelter, it was education for the children. And that's the hope that parents and teachers and others are pushing for education. I then went to a one-village hut school in South Sudan, and there were 20 children being educated in that school. But what I will remember is the portal, the window, and outside the school looking in were dozens upon dozens of children who could not get the chance of education. Now, we can deliver that in a number of different ways by bringing in the delivery agents, the NGOs, governments, and also the international organizations, but we will also need more finance. I noticed that people wanted to be UN General Secretary and people wanted to be education ministers, but nobody on that film wanted to be a finance minister. And it's the finance ministers that we're going to have to get to. Every country has a duty to meet this millennium target, that money should not be the barrier to getting every child to school. Every international organization has a duty to make sure its resources are allocated in such a way that we meet this objective. And there are new countries willing to give help, and there are new organizations and foundations willing to support. And the partnership, and Sheikha Moza here is the catalyst for this, that we now need to develop, needs to involve foundations, business, governments, international organizations, teachers, or parents, and civil society. Now, if we could all come together in that partnership, we can, and I believe we will, achieve the Millennium Development Goal objective.
Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, the strategic partners and UN envoy Gordon Brown, thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. You were brilliant. Thank you so much. Brilliant. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you. So, I think it says everything about Educate a Child when you get people at this level involved right at the start. You know, this is how you have an impetus and a push to go forward. So it's fantastic to see them all and all those organizations, the founding strategic partners and so many others are doing so much. So let me just remind you of what Educate a Child has done already. 500,000 children have been reached in over 20 countries, but clearly the mission is to reach millions. So new partners are needed, and Gordon Brown's clearly put that call out as well, saying, you know, we need to reach many more people who can share this vision and who can take it to more countries. So let's continue the conversation now and bring in more voices who are in a position to make a difference, people who have on-the-ground experience, whether it's fundraising in a very tough climate, whether it's scaling up projects, thinking of new and innovative solutions. So I'd like to invite our second panel to come up and join me on stage now. Thank you. A warm welcome to you all. Let me introduce our second panel to you. Sir Fazli Hassan Abid is well known to WISE as last year's WISE Prize laureate. He's the founder and chairman of a remarkable organization called BRAC, which began in Bangladesh and now works in many different countries. So he knows all about how to take successful projects to new locations. His Excellency Etienne Faichu is the Minister of Primary Education from the government of Chad. A warm welcome to you, sir. Kevin Cahill is the Chief Executive of Comic Relief, which primarily fundraises in the UK, where it's a fantastically well-known fundraising brand. And Charles Tapp is from the Global Partnership for Education, whose work was already touched upon by Carol Bellamy. So thank you very much for being here. Now, the ambition of Educate a Child means that we have to be incredibly innovative in thinking up new solutions, because the old solutions are not going to reach millions of people. So, Sir Fazli Hassan Abid, I wonder if you could begin, because you have over the years done many innovative things in bringing education to children in Bangladesh and elsewhere. Was it hardship that forced you into innovation of that kind?
Well, first of all, let me thank Her Highness Sheikha Moza for inaugurating the Education for All program. I want to thank her for because she visited one of the remote areas of Bangladesh last month to see our boat schools that we have started in areas where there is no land, and children are in various spots where they have to be collected by boat. And so boat school have started, and she has visited those. And I must thank that she is going to, her program is going to fund some of these boat schools, and also 2,000 slum schools in Bangladesh. So I want to thank her for this, and I want to thank her for taking education forward for the least marginalized children in post-conflict areas, and so on. I want to say that it has been experience of BRAC to try and get children in access to education and quality education. We have done that with teachers coming from villages, particularly women with 10 to 12 years of education, mostly housewives, and we have trained them for 2 weeks initially to start becoming a teacher. Then we have provided weekly visits, supporting supervision, and one-day refresher course every month to try and upgrade their skills as they teach and practice teaching.
So that's how you keep
how we keep the quality improving all the time. So that has been a very effective method of getting teachers to become very effective teachers, and to also train them in child-centered learning, which makes children to think rather than rote learning and memorizing and things like that. So
hopefully
we have been able
hopefully
to
also keeps them in school, because what they learn is more engaging.
And then and another thing that we have always tried to have is the children must enjoy coming to school. And I remember that at one time there was a flood in Bangladesh, and villages were cut off. There were children who were coming to school by swimming into this school. So they loved this school. So it's important that children must enjoy education when they're learning. And I think that's what BRAC has shown, that its children are learning as well as enjoying. Teachers are being trained while they are teaching. So these are some of the innovations that we have done in Bangladesh, and now taking this up to other countries like Afghanistan, in South Sudan, in Pakistan, where there are lots of marginalized children, particularly girl children, who are left without any education.
None of these places are easy to operate, no. So congratulations on the work you are doing. Now, a country which has many, many challenges is Chad, which has marginalized communities, children in refugee camps, and faces many difficulties in the cause of education. So, Minister, tell us what you are up against in delivering education to children in your country.
Merci, Madame.
Thank you, Madam. If you don't mind, I'll take the floor in French. First of all, I'd like to thank Her Highness the Sheikha for Educate a Child and for having invited us to take the floor at this meeting. Chad is a post-conflict country, and it is faced with numerous problems, especially pertaining to education of its children. Now, fortunately for us, we have different partners. We have UNESCO, we have UNICEF, we have the World Bank. We have partnerships with these different organizations, thanks to which we have a strategy for education and for literacy programs. And over and beyond this strategy, we have another big challenge that we need to face. We have more than 450,000 refugees coming from Sudan and Central Africa. We have children belonging to nomadic populations. We have all these different problems and these different marginalized populations, nomad children, and we have children coming from different countries who are refugees, actually, and these children are faced with numerous difficulties. And as I said, and you said yesterday as well, every single child, wherever he is, has the right to education. And we do have another problem as well. We have a problem with teachers. Currently, we have 95 to 100 students per teacher. And as the previous speaker said, we have to call on teachers belonging to the community, paid by the parents, and since a few months are being taken care of. So it is our aim to provide one teacher per 50 to 60 students so that we can bring this ratio down into urban and rural areas. We have one textbook in French for 4 people, one maths book for 4 children, and in some subjects it's one book for 7 children. So it's very hard to take up all these challenges. And on top of that, we have the problem of how to bring young girls to school. That is one of the biggest priorities of the government. And this is very clear in our constitution. Education is free, both for young girls and young boys.
Balancing many, many different challenges then. Girls' education, refugee education, teachers, lack of textbooks, all of those. So, clearly it's a very difficult environment to operate in. I'm going to get Charles Tapp involved actually next, if I may, Kevin, because Charles, I know that some of the work that you are doing with the Global Partnership for Education is in Chad. So just give us a sense of, how you would work with a government in fine-tuning its education plan and, bringing it within the remit of Educate a Child?
Yes, and certainly the challenges in Chad are enormous, as they are in many other countries. I think one of the most fundamental things, if one's looking at the whole issue of financing of education in some of these most needy and poorest countries, is to try and avoid a sort of a plethora of disjointed activities for which there are no sort of linkages and cohesion, and ensuring that everybody is working closely with the government in determining both the education policy, education strategy, and also coordinating the education financing. And so a huge part of what we're trying to do is to improve the overall efficiency as well of financing. And that's one of the very exciting things, I think, from the launch of this initiative with Educate a Child, is the way that we're able to start bringing in new sources of financing to work alongside some of the existing financing in a much more coherent and targeted way, and working with the government of Chad and working with other governments to ensure that all the resources are most effectively used. I think one thing it is worthwhile remembering is that the largest financer of education is always the host government. And the education sector is quite interesting because we've seen a generally quite a significant increase in most of the developing countries in terms of increases in host government budgets for education. And that's a success. The failure that we have within our sector, in the education sector, is that has not been matched by a commensurate increase in external financing. And the health sector has been much more successful in mobilizing sort of external financing, whereas in the education sector, the domestic financing has been very good. But I think following on what the Special Envoy, Gordon Brown, said, and Her Highness's initiative is aiming for, is we have to start mobilizing a much more diverse group of financing mechanisms, innovative financing, increasing funding from traditional donors and what have you, because governments such as Chad and other countries now seem to be seriously committed to education in their countries, and we cannot stand by and let them have to essentially not fulfill the promise that was made internationally over a decade ago.
Interesting. So perhaps education as a whole, and obviously this room is full of educators and people involved in education in different ways. Perhaps really this is a moment to learn as many lessons as possible from other sectors. Kevin Cahill, you have done remarkable work at Comic Relief in fundraising, in genuinely innovative ways. I mean, how much potential do you see for your mission to become more global and to tap into the goodwill and the power behind something like Educate a Child?
I'd say the potential is endless, really, because it's only limited by the power of our citizens, of the people of the world. Just to give people a bit of context, the Comic Relief is a UK organisation that is essentially a fundraising organisation that then allocates its money to tackle poverty across the globe, and then at the same time educates citizens of the UK about the need for that money, what lies behind it. And over a relatively short period, we've developed events like Red Nose Day, which we have, and Sport Relief, which have become the two biggest events of their kind in the world, which essentially raise money from ordinary citizens. And what we find is that if the narrative is powerful enough, if we're creative enough in the ways that we reach people, the people will reach out and show their commitment to and their interest in supporting fellow global citizens. We do a lot of work in schools in the UK. Our events reach 65 to 70% of the school population. And what you find is a child in a school in London, once he or she is told a compelling story about the life of a child in some other part of the world, a child living in poverty or in a fragile state or in a war zone, they understand it, they get it. because they, as children domestically, have the privilege of going to school and of being able to fulfill their potential. And so they're the first to show empathy, and when asked to kind of donate money or get involved, will do that. And so I think that we're really, the potential is unlimited, particularly in the modern world, because of course this Twitter feed is going on behind us, but in the world of social networks, the key thing is connectivity. Gordon talked about Malala there, but her story has gone around the world because of the power of contemporary platforms for communication. There are 1.5 billion smartphones in the world, and each of those is sitting in the pocket of their owners, and it has the potential to carry messages, to carry entertainment, to carry serious messages, but with a creative spin on them to citizens right across the globe. So I would say the potential is huge and is unlimited.
So telling the stories of the children in the way that we've seen a snapshot of their stories in the film is really important. So Fazli Hassan Abid, does that mean that you have to start with awareness not only of the problem, but awareness of the way things can change before you can really make this vision a reality?
Well, I think there is awareness about the value of education in all societies. In the old days, when I started 30 years ago, I think the awareness was not that very strong, and one had to try and get children into school. But nowadays, what we find is that most parents are ready to send their children to school. Their children wants to come to school, but they're not finding enough access or enough schools and so on. But anyway, I was thinking of schools in South Sudan. South Sudan has almost more than 100,000 children out of school, and one has to try and get them into school. And villages are ready, the children are ready to come to school, but there's no school. So one has to start building schools in the villages, finding teachers, training them and deploying them to start.
Can you find enough teachers in the country?
So that's also another problem. South Sudan, of course, had 30 years of conflict, and there were lots of children who grew up in refugee camps, probably had better education than those who didn't spend their time in refugee camps. So we are finding that some of the teachers who were in the refugee camps in Kenya and Uganda, they are probably better suited to become teachers who have had 10 to 12 years of education. But we find that they're not available in all parts of South Sudan. So we are now thinking of taking teachers out from Uganda and Kenya to try and get teachers operating.
But this goes to the heart of how you have to be really innovative and do things differently, because otherwise you're just not going to meet the ambition of these goals. I'd like to bring in more voices from people who are gathered here. And actually, I'd love to turn first to Swad Sharif Muhammad, who you saw in the film and who Her Highness mentioned. Swad, as you heard, Swad has come all the way from the Kakuma camp in Kenya, and it's fantastic that you're here, Swad. Just tell us about your own experience and how hard it was for you to get your education.
Okay, thank you so much. First of all, I would really like to thank Her Highness for inviting me to be here, and also initiating Educate a Child, and also expanding Educate a Child in Kakuma refugee camp. It will really help refugees who are living in a Kakuma refugee camp, because education is a basic human right, as well as a peace building. So it will really help them to be a better people in future. Okay, I started my primary education in Kakuma refugee camp, and when I started, I was just 8 years. That's the time I came to Kakuma refugee camp, and I have been living up to now. I'm 23 years, so you can imagine how many years I have been living in Kakuma refugee camp. So I started my primary school in the same school that I'm teaching today. Finished my primary school. I was the best girl, and I was sponsored by a Jesuit refugee service and taken to high school. When I was in second year, my father wanted me to get married because he wanted to receive a dowry. But my mother was a real role model, and she really understands what education is all about. And I also went to my dad and told him, it is just dowry. Let me finish first. After finishing my primary education, I will bring more than that money that you could get for dowry. So it was... It was really, really stressful, and I really thought I will drop out of school and be like any other girls who are out of school. But after talking to my dad, he understood and he told me, okay, it is fine. I finished my high school, and then UNHCR has supported me. Again, I got a college. I finished my diploma in education. Then I applied because I have understood the challenge that a girl child in a Kakuma refugee camp or any other refugee camp are undergoing. So I became one of the teachers, and I was there very hardworking. I was promoted to be a senior to deputy. Today I'm a head teacher. And I'm very, very happy to be here. And I'm very, very happy to be invited to be part of here. I never thought I will be here. And in future, I want to be a next Ban Ki-moon, so that in that position, there is no lady has ever been there. So I want to be the first lady in that position, if my dreams come true, because I'm still studying, if I succeed in my studies. Thank you so much. Thank you, Her Highness, and other partners. Thanks, UNHCR, and the rest.
Thank you. I hope, inshallah, you'll achieve your dream, Swat. Irina Bokova, perhaps you can pass the message on to Ban Ki-moon that he has a rival for his job in the room. No, I mean, it's an amazing journey, and it really goes to the heart of what Educate a Child is doing and will do in the future. So thank you so much for being here with us. Minister, if I could come back to you. You spoke already about just how many different kinds of challenges you are juggling. If I could ask you to just isolate one that would make a real difference to what you are able to do for the children of Chad.
Well, what is our top priority today? Today we have more than 1 million children between the ages of 6 and 11 who are out of school. They're in the streets, and we must do our utmost to make sure that these children are not a burden for their children, and we also have to make sure that these children become full-fledged citizens, citizens who are truly capable of using their potential and doing what they can for the development of their country. And these children have a right to education, even though they're out of school for the moment. It is the duty of the government to make sure that centers exist for basic non-formal education for these children, to bring these children in, to provide them with basic education or vocational education so that they become full-fledged citizens and they're able to fully contribute to the development of their country. So that's the first challenge that we face. 1 million children between the ages of 6 to 11 who are out of school. This is our top priority. We want to make sure that these children are educated, and we're going to do this with the help of our partners. Thank you.
Alone, it is quite something. I want to get more thoughts from people in the audience. Ita Sheehy from UNHCR. Ita, if you are, yes. I'd love to hear from you, and also from, we've been talking already about the particular problems facing girls' education. So Mercy Musomi, are you also here from the Girl Channel? Great. So if we could hear from Ita first and then from Mercy.
Thank you very much. Just talking about the refugee population in the world, over 11 million refugees, and certainly not decreasing at the moment, unfortunately. Once a person crosses a border, the average duration of a person's life as a refugee is 17 years. That's what we can expect. That's a whole lifetime of education and beyond. I think listening to Suad's reflections, it shows us how much hope, how much drive there are amongst everybody to get an education. Unfortunately, the vast majority of refugees, of displaced people, of poor people in many countries do not get that opportunity. And I think we need to look at this at different levels. That we've got a child who wants to go into a school, first of all, has to be admitted to the school. In many countries, that's not possible. The laws do not allow it. So it needs the interception of ministries of education with the partnerships of the Global Partnership for Education, UNICEF, UNESCO, the bilaterals, those who help develop national education plans. That's the first step in getting a child into a school. There are so many other aspects to it again, many of which are supported by the multiple numbers of NGOs who do an awful lot of work as well in getting children into school, in trying to keep them there, in mobilising communities for this. Yeah. So I think that the issue of partnership that has come up here is enormously important. I would like to pick up again on the whole idea of innovative financing and the sort of the reflection, as we've seen ourselves across the years, that the health sector has been so much more successful in getting finances for health than the education sector has in getting finances for education. And I think that's where we need all of those who are in a position to influence this to work on that. Another sector that I'd just like to briefly touch on, I'm watching here all of the Blackberries, all the Twittering, all the iPads, all the technology in this room and the technology that surrounds us in our lives. Refugees and a lot of other marginalised people do not have access to that kind of technology. As an education sector, we have failed to get reading material into schools, into communities. We know that it needs an hour and a half of exposure a day to reading material for a child to learn to read. How can they do that with the kind of facilities that are provided? And I think the partnership needs to be brought in much more as well with those who are supporting technology. We know all the big agencies and the organisations and the institutes. So that we bring in access to reading through tablets, through mobile phones, through all of the other means that we can do. So it's another branch of the partnership that I think needs to be looked at very strongly.
I guess, thank you so much, Ita. I guess that this goes to, Charles, what you touched upon, that you need that coherent plan, don't you? Because unless you're incredibly coherent and strategic about what you're trying to do in this area, it is going to be piecemeal, there's going to be too much waste, and it's just not going to be effective.
Yeah, absolutely, and I mean that is probably the most important lesson that one can take over the work that's been going on in the last decade. I mean, one hates to refer to the concept of waste or anything else, but it does seem quite extraordinary that there is so much uncoordinated activity. There is an arrogance almost that goes with that, particularly from some of the external sort of financing and activities that go on in countries, that somehow things are known better and folk can just go and do what it is that they feel like. We have to have coherent plans, very, very strong coordination, and we have to mobilize to be able to mobilize more financing. And I think the challenge for the education sector in terms of its external financing, the international financing it brings, is what lesson can it learn from, say, the health sector or climate change or what have you. And if we look at it in terms of, I think it was in 1994, education, population, HIV/AIDS, and the rest of the health sector, those three things all had the same level of external financing. Now it is a sort of a fundamental difference. I think it's 5 times the amount that is provided now into health and
so
reproductive health.
Perhaps this is education's moment then.
We have a lesson to learn from that. It's not because education is more difficult. It's because actually we haven't been communicating the messages and we haven't been able to find enough of that whole sort of compelling argument. That's our job to do. And now working with new partners, I think we have an opportunity to do that.
Just before I come back to the floor, just a quick thought, because Ita raised the point about technology, and I know, Kevin, you have done very clever things over the years with fundraising in a high-tech way. You know, again, is that how you see the trajectory, that actually it's not only telling the stories more compellingly, but it's being as high-tech as possible, making it easy for people to give?
Yes, I think that offers us an extraordinary opportunity that we were able to pioneer giving through the mobile phone in the UK, just through the simple mechanism of a £1 text. And for our last event, it raised £30 million just through that simple action, and it makes people powerful. I think that because they can feel they can make a difference, and I'm sure there's a unity of purpose in the room here, and thanks to the leadership of Her Highness in gathering people to discuss this. And I think, to echo Charles's point, that we've all got different assets to bring to bear on this, on education for the world. And I think that it's up to everyone to get those aligned so that collectively we can achieve the biggest possible result for the world's children. We can play a part in almost a message light aspect of this. We can reach millions of people through an organization like my own, but combining that with their own interests around sport or education or music. And then it's up to, I think, everyone else, the policymakers, the politicians, the corporate partners to build on a climate of understanding to deliver the best possible result. And I'm sure that technology will be a fantastic asset to all of us moving forward.
This is an initiative that has come from Her Highness, it's come from Qatar, and clearly it's a long-term goal, because education is about long-term vision. So I just, before we end with you, Mercy, I wonder if I could just come first to a representative of Qatari youth, Habis Mohammed Hawail. Habis, you're here, right? Tell us how you see this.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. When the children around the world ask when the right time for us to have the right of education, Her Highness Sheikha Moza bint Nasser take the initiative to tell them the right time, it's now. As a youth representative, as a youth who believe in education, it's the right time to participate, to take the ownership, to volunteer in this initiative, to give our children, our brother and sister in the whole world, the right of education, because our social responsibility required us to give them the right. A youth is a major demographic group. Unlike other generation, we have born in a contact world to share common global value. Therefore, our engagement is necessity, not add the plus. I would like to take advantage of the different parties here today to ask from your expertise what worked and what hasn't. Where do you see us add a common value in such a project, and what we can do differently?
Yes.
The last thing, I would like to suggest establishing a network of youth volunteers to promote action-based involvement with the project of EAC all year around. Tell me, and I will forget. Show me, and I will not remember. Involve me, and I will understand it.
Thank you so much. Thank you. So, this initiative needs innovative ideas, so thank you for that one, a global network of youth volunteers who can be part of putting this into reality. Thank you very much. For a final thought, Mercy Musomia, I'd like to come to you, because your work is all about the girl child, and obviously I believe this strongly, but women are at the heart, I think, of making sure that this vision is delivered. Over to you.
Thank you very much. I want to start by thanking Her Highness for coming to Kenya to see what is happening there. Even if she did not visit my organization and the children we work with, Her Highness, we are still expecting you.
Next time.
Next time. And I know she's very busy. One of the things that I want to state here is, I'm standing here as a representative of marginalized girls, who I was a victim, a survivor of sexual gender-based violence when I was 12 years from my own head teacher in primary school. And that is what gave me passion to be what I fight for from that day on through high school, through university, and even as a working woman, a working girl, a working youth. And I want to agree with my brother here. Let's not call our youth and our children leaders of tomorrow. Let them be the leaders of today. Thank you, Highness, for fighting that the young people can do something innovative for this project. I want to say under the EACI, what we have planned to do with the Office of Highness is to look for those marginalized girls, particularly girls with disabilities. In Kenya, Girl Child Network works with the marginalized girls, of course with a percentage of boys. But it's one thing in Africa to be a girl. It's also worse when you are a girl with disabilities. Mm-hmm. You are believed that you are not a human being, you are under a curse, and you are not supposed to be put out of the home to go to school. Our initiative in partnership with Her Highness will venture to get those children out of school, both boys and girls, out of their homes and bring them to school. And in school, what we are preaching or what we are advocating is financing for inclusion. That those children don't need to learn in their own classrooms, but we want them to learn with the others so that they can have the capacity to think through like the other children are doing. We are also having a component where our girls from the marginalized areas don't access sanitary tiles. So even as we are pushing them to go to school and getting them out of their homes to go to school, upon reaching puberty, girls have to stay home 4 or 5 days every month because of lack of sanitary towels when they are having their menses. Can you imagine? I know people in the West, Her Highness, take it for granted. A girl in Africa and in the marginalized is very disadvantaged.
Thank you so much. I think, you know, your perspective and so many other people will continue to be part of this conversation. So thank you very much to everyone who contributed to the floor, and thank you also to my panel. Thank you very much. So, ladies and gentlemen, Educate a Child is a mission, but it's also an invitation. It's an invitation to all of you in this room to consider how you might be able to get involved if you aren't already, because clearly many of you here could make a real difference. This initiative is a great combination of being launched today, but already up and running in the projects that have reached 500,000 children. So please think about how you could be a part of the ambition to reach millions of out-of-school children. Your Highness, thank you, because all of these things, as Gordon Brown said, you know, they need people who care, who are going to take it forward, and that's what you're doing. And I hope many people continue to be part of that. And I know that this vision is really rooted in what you've seen in your travels around the world. And so I'd like to close by bringing everyone here a glimpse of that journey. Thank you.
Seeing things on the ground really is totally different than reading about them or hearing about them. You know, what I saw in Bangladesh is so different than what I just saw in Gaza. They're all different in terms of the environment, different in terms of the crisis. But at the end of the day, you see the results are the same. Kids are out of schools. Kids are striving to accomplish their human rights, which is education, live decently as others.
Good? You're good? The teachers that we have is 1 to 64. That means one teacher handling 64 learners.
I knew that there is lack of materials, schools and classrooms, but the classrooms, we barely can call them classrooms. I have seen in Bangladesh some pencils which I never saw before in my life. Plastic tubes that they just cut and they inserted this heads that they could write with.
This is very creative, very creative. You did that?
Whatever we say, whatever we do is not enough to rectify the situation. I just need to go and digest whatever I saw and to rethink everything. And I want to create one school that can be set as a model. It can be done, it can be achieved. but we need really concerted efforts where we could really reach the standard and the level that those kids deserve.